Hello and welcome to another D&D Stories. I'm your host, TheWriter, and this is the show where I sit here and regale you with all the gaming tabletop stories and remember when something cool happened. So we return once more to the Labyrinth campaign, in which we have just found out that the Labyrinth is infinite, but it is not indestructible. It is similar to a roll of parchment with 4 stones holding the corner, and if you take the stones away, the whole thing rolls up and collapses on itself. So, our new party member, the Minotaur Taurus, is a wellspring of information, and our party decides to keep him to find out what he knows and to navigate the labyrinth a bit more carefully now that they know that it's completely arbitrary and that the end, quote-unquote, is inside that murderous dungeon inside Liner's puzzle box. So the labyrinth doesn't mean anything. The finish line is in the palm of their hands. So Taurus, like I said, was a wellspring of information, and I've got my notes here, so if I pause, that's what I'm doing, I'm reading. Taurus was a wellspring of information and decided to show them, hey, each group is given their own puzzle box, so it's like quote-unquote fair that everybody be able to get to the end of the labyrinth by some means or another of these puzzle boxes. And Taurus has his own puzzle box, and we find out that Zalus, our wizard, also has one because he picked it up off the bags that the Necromancer dropped, because the Necromancer was the leader of his own group, albeit the group that he killed. But each cell of prisoners is given an exit if they are only clever enough to find it. So Taurus says each group is attuned to a particular puzzle box. So let me show you what happens when you open the wrong one. And Zalus hands over the puzzle box, and he works it, and Taurus has been through so many time loops of the labyrinth that he probably knows how most of them work. So he works it for a bit, and he tosses it onto the ground, and it bursts open, revealing a big group of chain golems. Golems that are made of chains. Oh god. Their reach is like 20, 30, 40 feet. Their grapple is incredible because they're made of chains. And they are made of iron and steel and mithril. They are metal creatures that are a bit of a bitch to handle. So, while this puzzle box is being opened, who should show up out of an opening section of the wall but the pale Cenobite from earlier, Pinhead, if you want to put a name off the reference. And it was, "A box was opened, but it was not yours. Suffer the consequences," and the chain golems attack. And this long drawn-out fight happens where it's the party versus the chain golems, and it doesn't really work well. They need to get out because chain golems are a bitch. God, they hit so hard. Even having a party member like Taurus, they are shepherded about the room by the force of the blows they are receiving. And even Ming, with his really high monk grapple, they can throw their arms out and their arms become chain-like and they can wrap up Ming's arms, and he's trying to pull them back and forth, but even his grapple is not high enough, so they've got to escape. And Liner reaches into his backpack, his little dragon backpack, and he pulls out his own puzzle box. He's like, "We've got to get out of here." He starts working the puzzle box, and since he's been toying with it for so long, now he has the use magic device enough to do it himself. He doesn't have to hand it off to Zalus. So they make a loose ring around Liner because they know he's going to take them off to the finish line dungeon, the Tomb of Horrors. And it opens up another section of wall, and they pile in, and Liner twists the box again to unsolve it, and it closes the door, leaving the chain golems and the pale Cenobite behind. And, Taurus and Ming immediately get into an argument. "Taurus, why did you do that? Those things were freaking dangerous. You could have gotten us all killed." And it's like, "I've been killed so many times, I don't care." They're like, well, I value my life over your life. Is like, well, good, that's a basic instinct. And so Ming is just furious with this guy. And goes right at him to go after his throat. It's like, it's a minotaur. They grapple back and forth, just standing on this cliff's edge, with the cliff that goes off into oblivion. And it's like, the minotaur is stronger than you, man. And they roll off to see who wins. Taurus wins and throws Ming off the cliff. He falls, it must have been like 900 feet, like a good 10-second tour before he managed to like get his like grappling hooks onto his wrists and like dig into the side of the canyon and like scratch and claw his way to a halt. I'm glad he didn't break his fucking wrists doing that. And he can't like body climb 900 feet with no ropes and no way to get back up, so he's kind of stuck down there, and Liner kind of face palms again, and he goes, all right, let me work the puzzle box again, and then they go back to the labyrinth, and it picks a random room, so the chain golems are gone, and of course a section opens up next to Ming, so Ming can like swing in to the cliff face and back into the labyrinth, and then it closes behind them, and like, all right, no more infighting. Taurus set a good example for what not to do, and we almost got killed, sure, but let's not fight each other. 5 is better than 4, especially when our 5th person is a minotaur with a 2-handed sword. And Taurus is kind of like folding his arms, and Ming is folding his arms, and they're like, like a pair of brothers or something. But they go back to the finish line area again, so they just go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth to try and make sense of this space. And they return to the Tomb of Horrors, which I'm just calling the finish line dungeon, because if I call it the Tomb of Horrors, they'll have something to Google and look up what's ahead of them. So I call it the finish line dungeon. And everything has reset itself. The pit traps are no longer open. The door to the next room is closed again. There's no gargoyle body. The open mouth that contains the Sphere of Annihilation is still at the far end of the hall. It looks like when they left, it reset. I'm like, oh, great. And Dalton, their halfling rogue, decides that he's going to take point because he's the rogue. He falls into a pit trap and dies, taking 8d8 damage. And Zalus is like, we lose more rogues that way. Oh well, I resurrect him as a skeleton using the Necromancer's book. And the skeletons of this halfling crawls up out of the pit trap, still covered with blood and gore. And the guy that was playing Soon Dead, who was playing Vince, who was playing Dalton, just kind of like throws his pen. And he's like, fucking hell, man. And I was like, you knew it was there. I don't know what to say to you. We'll just call him Tom. Tom, I don't know what to say to you. You've had multiple characters die within 25 feet of each other. You should know, you should remember, hey, and you could even use out-of-character knowledge, or you could say, oh, your party members said, hey, watch out for the pit trap that's right there, so you would know it was, no, he just ran in. Oh, some players never learn, and there's no way to teach them. It's like teaching somebody to play D&D. It's like you can teach them how to paint, but you can't teach them how to make their own masterpieces. Anyway, they decide that they've got to go back and get another party member, so they leave the Tomb of Horrors, and they arrive back in the Labyrinth, just in time for Belagosi, the guy who's running the Labyrinth, to announce that they have another arena match coming up. And they go, has it been 7 days already? And he goes, yeah. How long have you guys been gone? And he goes, you're still wearing your crystals, right? Maybe time works differently in the place where you're going than it does here, but it's been another 7 days. There are less than 50 people left in your battle group. And, Ming takes a note of this because he's trying to figure out how many people are left before the Labyrinth starts looking only at them and everything turns to shit. So there are less than 50 people left, counting them. So less than 45 people left when you think about it. So, let's see. The next arena match, Bela Lugosi tells them, is going to be in just about an hour. So if they want to cheat and learn about their upcoming opponent, who is doing a double-header match, they can listen at the door. They just aren't allowed to open it. So Bela Lugosi waves his hand, and a big pair of double doors appear, and you can see light under the door, so you know it leads out into that Coliseum again. And they go, okay, we're going to go and listen at the door. And Bela Lugosi brings in another rogue, because, you know, how many is this now? Soon Dead, Vince, Darius, Dalton. So this would have been rogue number 4, character number 5, for the same guy. God. Anyway, so they listen to, like, the announcer who is spectating over this match, who's got like a loudspeaker rune on his neck, so his voice is like a god's. And they learn that the name of their opponent is Lilia and Rhymefang. And Lilia, by the sound of it, is a person, no, Lilia, sorry, I get my names mixed up. Lilia and Rhymefang. And from what they can tell, Rhymefang is some kind of beast, because they can hear it roaring and stomping about like a great dragon or something like that. And they go, is there a dragon? Is this person like a druid summoning up dragons? You know, wouldn't that make him like a level 20 druid? And they look back and forth at each other like they're trying to figure out who this person is before they have to charge in against this beast and its mistress. So the time comes after the match is over, because the winner is Lilia and Rhymefang. Ah, yeah, we love Lilia, we love Rhymefang. Ah. The seats are clearly packed from the sound of it, and the timer, which is displayed by like just a turning wheel on the door, hits 0. And our party members they drink their potions, and they put some buffs on themselves, and they break the seal, and they push the doors open, emerging out into the Coliseum to reveal a Beastmaster and a Hydra. And they go, how does she get that through the labyrinth? And they go, well, it could be, like we said, a druid, like summon nature's ally, summon monster, that kind of thing. So She's like a Pokemon trainer. She summons all manner of magical beasts, but clearly she is more powerful than she lets on, because she is summoning fucking 12-headed hydras to her side to do her fighting for her. And I go, okay, roll initiative, and then I look over at Zalus, because I know he's going to win. And, of course, Zalus rolls really high, and he has the improved initiative, and he wants to go first. And he's like, all right, I've been looking through this necromancer's book, so instead of Phantasmal Killer, I've got, this other instant kill spell that's got a higher threshold for saves and all that. And what was it? Finger of Death. Finger of Death. There's like Phantasmal Killer, and then above that is Finger of Death. It's a bigger, meaner instant death spell. So he runs out, and he points at the Hydra, and he goes, Finger of Death! And the Hydra makes its save, puts a crosshairs on Zalus, and charges straight across the way. Like, there's no hi, how are you? It goes instantly into this bloodbath that's about to happen. And, Taurus pulls his big two-handed sword, and he's like, I've got this, bah! Because, he's a great big meat shield that they've got now. So, this big, long fight breaks out between our party and then Lilia and Rhymefang, the Hydra. And it goes pretty much like you might expect. Like, there are too many heads here doing too many different attacks. They get pushed around the arena. Even like Furious Ming, who's doing combat with Lilia, who has like a big long like pole arm thing going on, is not able to really get close to her without taking initial damage anyway, because she's got a long weapon. to just like stab him a few times while he's trying to get close. So the battle does not go well, and they decide that they need to run. And of course they turn, and the doors are gone because it's an arena match. And Liner works the puzzle box hoping that they can run to the finish line dungeon because it's another plane of existence. You know, they don't need a door, they just need a wall because the wall comes open to go there. And as soon as they do this, it summons the Pale Man out again because Liner isn't able to concentrate very well during a great big battle, so he isn't able to picture where he wants to go as clearly, so he summons out the Endless Abyss dungeon area that contains the Cenobites. And the pale guy, Pinhead, is pissed because they're trying to run. And so, what do? Pinhead, the pale man, whatever you want to call him, I stole him blatantly, I'll just call him Pinhead, uses chains that are wrapped about his chest and arms to string Liner up that are covered with hooks and needles and spikes, and basically like just swing him back and forth, hit the ground, swing him back, hit the ground, like a freaking cartoon, just beats the hell out of this little dragon. And, you know, Ming turns from Lilia, takes a shot in the back, and then runs towards Liner and Pinhead to try and rescue him before he gets taken out because he's the party healer and it would suck to be them. So Ming runs up, and just as Liner's landing on the ground, bloodied and beaten all to hell, Ming grabs the chains and he goes, "I want to break the chains with my bare hands." And I go, "You're basically holding barbed wire, so okay, give me a strength check, I guess." And he's like, rolls a 20. Psh, chain shards go everywhere. And Liner is thrown to the ground in a bloody heap. He grabs up Liner and, you know, shoves a potion in his muzzle as he's running away from Pinhead, who takes only one more turn to conjure up more chains off of himself and like slowly walk across the Colosseum ground to try and get to them again. Meanwhile, Taurus, after much effort and help from his friends, kills the Hydra, which was regenerating health over time because it's a Hydra and that's what they do. Whenever you cut off a head, 2 more heads appear and it gets X amount of health back every round. Taurus manages to like charge and gore it with his horns, just right through the rib cage, right through the heart, and it goes down hard. The match ends when they basically surround Lilia and like kick her until she falls over, and Liner grabs the puzzle box off the bloody battleground and twists it to banish Pinhead and the opening that he came from. So they are left with a dead Hydra and Lilia like captured. So the arena match is over. Yeah, that was so awesome. There were Hydras and demons and chains. And did you see that guy? He broke chains with his bare hands. Oh, that was awesome. Where's my popcorn? And there, the thing pretty much ends, and like the top of the arena closes over them to blot out the crowd. And so they have a live prisoner, which Zalus wants her to join because she's obviously a very powerful warrior, you know, monster summoner, Pokemon master, whatever you want to call that. And they kind of contemplate amongst themselves for a while because, you know, Taurus just wants to like take her stuff, rape her, and then like cut her throat and leave her because he's evil and he's been in the Labyrinth so long he doesn't care anymore. But they convince him otherwise because, you know, it's 4v1 or 5v1 if Lilia joins them. So he's like, fine. So they had looted her to begin with, and they were just going to leave her without a stitch. And like any other boss that they had faced so far. But they give all of her stuff back, and she says, all right, that she will join them as long as she gets to keep all of her stuff. So they give all of her stuff back. Taurus is against this because women are just a distraction and they don't belong in the labyrinth, rah, 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 rah. About what you might expect from somebody like him. But Liner talks him down, pretty much, and while he's passing out healing spells, because, hey, if you could instantly heal somebody of any grievous wound, I'm sure you could talk people into a lot of things. So, as the DM, I'm like, God damn it, they're just grabbing all the people they can. Before long, there's going to be like 12 people running around in the labyrinth, steamrolling over everything. So they rest, they throw a fate coin to summon either Belagosi or the shop, and they summon the shop so they can do their shopping. And they sit and converse amongst each other. They ask Lilia why she's in the labyrinth. She doesn't want to share this because everybody there is there because they're on death row and they're meant to die. So whatever horrible crime she has committed, she is keeping to herself because they just met. Anyway, so, checking my notes again. Liner decides that he's going to use his puzzle box so they can return to the finish line dungeon once again. But he doesn't solve it properly this time. He doesn't roll high enough. His use magic device and his concentration fail him. He should have handed it off to Zalus again, but he didn't. And he ends up summoning Pinhead, the Chatterer, and the Smoker all at the same time. 3 Cenobites, or flesh golems, or whatever you want to stat them as. And so they melt from one boss fight into another, where during the battle, Pinhead looks into Liner's soul. He is a young dragon, only the size of a corgi, who worships Bahamut and is falsely accused, slinging holy magic every which way. He is obviously an innocent amongst all these filth, these rapers and murderers and kidnappers. And he offers Liner an exit. Basically, he says, I have the power to remove anyone whomso I choose from the labyrinth forever. You do not belong here amongst all this filth. You can be gone. And Zalus, who is being, choked by one of the other Cenobites, up against a wall, is just, bashing him against the wall, choking him. He's like, Liner, go! This might be your only chance. Moving that alignment over to, neutral evil. But Zalus tells Liner to just go. And everybody else is too busy fighting the other 2 Cenobites, who are mostly immune from damage. Their damage reduction is through the roof, because they're basically supernatural devils with BDSM gear on. But Zalus tells Liner to go, and Liner agrees. So Pinhead wraps him up in chains, and they disappear from sight. And the other Cenobites, since their leader left, also leave, and the puzzle box gets left behind, and the doorways close, the way to the other dimensions close, the way to the finish line dungeon also close. So their beacon of light, Liner, is taken away. And Zalus asks where Oh, yes, sorry. Zalus uses another fate coin. They gathered a few from various, minor fights or treasure chests and things like that. He flips another coin to summon Belagosi to find out where Liner is, because Liner is still wearing one of those scrying crystals, to be able to see whatever it is that Liner sees, or at least what's around him. And they find out that the Cenobites have basically dragged him into their own torture room, which is, technically, outside the labyrinth. So Pinhead basically sweet-talked him away from his group. And Belagosi kind of dodges answers on how to get there, but instead offers up a library, which is a really strange thing to see inside a labyrinth. But hey, if it's infinite, I guess there's infinite possibilities. So he offers up a library, and says that they might find their answers there. Meanwhile, Liner is being tortured in Cenobite Hell. They strap him up like by his wings to a big wooden column, and they nail him to the fucking column, and they put hooks through his little hands, and he is, screaming for his mother the whole time. He's there bleeding from everywhere. And they've just got little knives, or they're just gonna like skin the side of him off just a little bit and leave a patch of scales there, and skin off the next bit and leave a little patch of scales there. And, Liner is, just a few minutes of that is enough to drive anybody mad. And Liner is just weeping for mercy, but there is no one to help you when you're caught by the Cenobites. There is no one left. Now, after a time, our party starts to realize that these puzzle boxes, they're basically like warp jumps. They can take you, like Liners, they can take you to the finish line, they can open up hellish dimensions, and they can also help you skip from one place to another in the Labyrinth, which, if it's infinite, is a great way to jump around. So you might say, hey, I want to go to the cornucopia at the very start and work the puzzle box, and you'd show up there. Not that there would be anything left, but if you've got a landmark to go on and you can kind of visualize it, a puzzle box can take you there. So it's like having a map screen in Super Mario World, where you go to Star Road and then it'll take you to one of the corners of Super Mario World. But the puzzle box would take you to different points in the Labyrinth. So they go, okay, we need to go to the library. So everybody gather around, join hands. Liner's usually the one that does this. We're going to see if we can't all focus on our idea of a library and get there. So Zalus takes Liner's puzzle box, and he works it, and it opens up the wall, and they end up outside of a great, like, cathedral-sized library. It's like a building still inside the Labyrinth. Like, there are still walls and coverings and stuff everywhere, and locked doors and traps, but they end up in front of a big building that is, it's inside the Labyrinth. And meanwhile, while this is happening, Liner is approached by Pinhead, who is bored with him for the moment. And he's like, please, no tears. It's a waste of good suffering. Learn well this lesson and never leave them behind again. And then he basically takes Liner by the shoulders and rips him off of this column. Ah, my wings, ah! He's got tears all, he is not going to be flying anywhere ever for a long time. He's dripping from every which way. He's going to be a red dragon by the time this is over, just because of all the blood going every which way. And he goes, this is your only warning. And he teleports him with a wave of his hand to just splat on the ground in front of his party, just a bloodied mess. Liner, oh my God! And they run and they throw potions on him, and they throw bandages around him. He's unconscious. He's their healer. If he goes down, then there's no helping it. So they get one of their water buckets and they fill it with potions, and they basically just dip him inside and make him drink the rest to bring him back to life, because he's missing giant chunks of scales. His wings are in freaking tatters. There's only so much that a healing potion can actually do as far as catastrophic injury. I usually don't have them heal broken bones or scars or anything like that, but Liner was going to be messed up for a while. And they decide to make camp there to wait for Liner's recovery, because there was no telling what sort of dastardly traps were waiting for them inside what Bela Lugosi called the library. So they wait for a while for Liner to recover, and they take a rest. They use a coin to summon the shop and do some shopping to make sure that their healer is going to be back on his feet before they go journeying into anything further. And they push the great doors of the library open, and they peer inside, and yeah, it's basically a library. The librarian that they find is just a disembodied voice, because of course it is. And the first thing that they ask for, Ming, the furious monk, steps forward and says, what is the most checked out book in the whole library? And the librarian directs them to it, and they pull it off the shelf, and it's just a file, like a manila folder file from a police station or something, or a guard station for this era. And they find out that it is the law enforcement report on Taurus, as he was caught by authorities after assassinating Heidi. And the general consensus that they could make was that Taurus was a hired sword, and of course he did not give away his employer, no matter what they did to him, as well as his I guess his partner in crime. He would not give that person away either. So he was condemned to the Labyrinth, and stuffed in the case file was a wanted poster that said Taurus was worth 500,000 gold. And given that Bela Lugosi had all the money to make this infinite labyrinth bullshit, well, 500,000 probably wasn't too much to pay for the guy that killed his wife. So they ask the librarian questions. They check out a book on gargoyles, so the next time they go to the finish line dungeon, they'll be prepared. I think Zalus checked out a book to learn the telekinesis spell, and they paw through all this knowledge because there's plenty of it, and the labyrinth is so unforgiving that knowledge can be power when it comes to a place like this. And eventually they run across the restricted section, which the librarian has named off limits for the moment. And they go over there and they find that the restricted section has a slot for a fate coin, which is another use for that item that I completely made up. So they decide on a person to go in. I think they picked whichever rogue was with them. I've actually run out of memories of all the different rogues that died. I'm sorry. So they pick the rogue and they give him the fate coin, and he sticks it in the slot like a coin machine. And he goes in. He finds Heidi's journal and brings it out, and they flip through it for a minute, and they find that it's missing its back page, but everything else is intact, and it's written in complete arcana math gobbledygook from Alchemy Academy and that kind of stuff, that she was working on an infinite space theory to make a prison that had no doors and no guards, that it was just an infinite series of confusion to trap the worst of the worst forever. So the labyrinth was actually in its embryonic stages before she died. She was making a quote-unquote humane prison where you could roam about as you pleased. And Taurus was sent to kill her. By whom? We don't know. But according to Heidi's journal, she was running from town to town. Where Bela Lugosi was, we don't know. But running from town to town, trying to complete her work while she knew that Taurus was chasing her, and he was hot on her heels for quite a while. So it's laced with fear. It's laced with paranoia on who she talks to and who she gives her real name to, what inns she stays in, and why. All the while working on these mathematical equations to finish out this ultimate spell for her to make an endless labyrinth, or an endless space where she could keep prisoners that could roam around but never escape. So let's see, I'm checking my notes. So we do know by the police report, or whatever you want to call it, that Taurus eventually tracked her down as a mercenary and killed her, but he didn't find her journal or her work, so he only got paid half of whatever price was on Heidi's head, and Bela Lugosi ended up with all of her stuff, thusly the existence of the labyrinth. But because Bela Lugosi wasn't privy to all of her little notes and ciphers and things, he made the labyrinth using her infinite space theory, but it was a perversion. It was like a mutilated version of this, and it would only last for a year before the numbers started falling apart in all the equations, and it would shrink down into one room and then collapse before restarting again. So it was like it's like the birth and death of the universe theory. It explodes and then it goes into a great crunch. But for the Labyrinth, it would only last for a year. So to hold it open and to keep it from collapsing right away, he got 4 entities that by their sheer presence would keep the Labyrinth from collapsing right away. It would slow down the collapse of the Labyrinth. And so they got quite a bit of information. The Labyrinth is infinite, but it is not permanent. So that's why there's a time limit, because the first day of spring, the whole Labyrinth is going to go into its crunch phase, and, anything and everything will be crushed into one room before it explodes out to be infinite again. So it's going to suck to be them pretty soon if they don't get out of there. So they make plans to return to the finish line dungeon. They've kind of got it by now that the Labyrinth doesn't mean anything, and that dungeon is the way to go. So, like I said, Lilia checks out a book on gargoyles. They head back, and Zalus remembers that, the one door they've got has a window on it. So he looks through the bars, and he can see the gargoyle, like, in a 3-point stance, ready to jump on whoever opens the door. So he's like, I pull my wand of lightning bolt and stick it through the bars. Lightning bolt! And he zaps it. And then they throw the door open. Ming grabs it around the middle, does like a German suplex, and then throws it down into the spike pit. They've got that fight down now. They've gone to and from this place so many times by this point that the gargoyle is not too much of a threat. So they move on through the dungeon. And it's always the weak point of a story for me to describe dungeon crawling, because that's the game. That's them playing the game. There's not much like story elements going on. So I'm just going to cover the highlights. And if you jump onto Google and look up the Tomb of Horrors in D&D 3.5, I'm sure you'll find it. And I've deviated from it to fit the Labyrinth storyline, but you can find bits and pieces of it all over the internet. So just Google Tomb of Horrors and then hit image search and you'll see the map. So it's not exact, but close enough. So I'll just run through the highlights. They ran through some tiny rooms that had tiny doors. Some of them had to be opened sideways. Some of them had to be pulled open by a strength check. Some of them had to be unbuttoned. Some of them rotated. All kinds of stuff like that, like a fun house almost. They kept expecting to run into something bad, but they never did. Meng found another crawl space and ran into a brain in a jar in a side room, so Liner had to run through because he's so much smaller and he doesn't have to crawl, and resists the brain in a jar and blasts it with his lightning breath, freeing his friend in the process. So that was kind of scary, because a brain in a jar might just hold you in place, or it might tell you to go bash your head against the wall until you die. It's not a fun thing to be near. It's a psychic domination trap monster. It's not cool. Our rogue, who I don't even remember the name of because he died and had so many different bodies and names, wandered through a misty archway that destroyed all of his magic items, because it's the Tomb of Horrors and that's how unfair it is. And they had to find a side passage to get around that and not lose all their stuff. Taurus eventually accidentally fell into a pit trap, and he took the 8d8, but it actually rolled pretty low, so he survived and didn't get impaled straight away. And while he was chugging health potions and pulling himself off of the spikes, he found a hidden door at the bottom of a spike pit. And so he just kind of bashes it open with a fist and goes, "Look at this. This, what a bullshit place to put a what a bullshit place to put a hidden door. So they throw a rope down and they all climb down and they go through there because clearly that's the right way if it was that hidden. They continue on through like a long hallway and they find an embalming chamber. And in the embalming chamber they find Heidi's coffin. And they, of course, they push it open to find basically a mummy of a young woman who, of course, sits up and comes to life because, of course, it does, and tries to fight them. But Zalus blasts it with his lightning bolt wand, and it just goes to pieces because it's a frail mummy. And they go, was that Heidi? You know, was there anything else in the coffin? What the hell? They find wanted posters in the coffin with her that are of Taurus and Lilia. And Lilia is also worth 500,000 gold. And everybody turns and looks and goes, were you working with Taurus before when you were hunting down Heidi? And she goes, I don't remember. And Taurus nods and confirms this. Why didn't you say anything? I'm the only one that remembers anything. You know, I've explained it to her so many times. It's like every 6 months or whatever, the cycle starts all over again. I've stopped trying to explain it. He goes, well, explain it to us. And he goes, well, Lilia and I were swords for hire that were sent to kill Heidi by someone who was jealous of her arcane genius making an infinite space and wanted to kill her and steal her research. Unfortunately, we were witnessed without knowing it, and we were perfectly described, you know, a minotaur and a woman dressed like a beastmaster summoning up monsters. We were not hard to find after that, so Bela Lugosi sent out wanted posters after Heidi had been assassinated, and he had recovered her research before Taurus or Lilia could find it. So Taurus and Lilia became victim to that which they were going to steal. So whatever money they were promised, they never got. They were captured and then thrown into the labyrinth. Taurus was cursed to remember everything forever. And apparently there was some kind of romance between Taurus and Lilia. It really wasn't explained, but hey, you know, people that hunt down other people together tend to stay together. I don't... I mean, a Minotaur and a Beastmaster, I don't know. Maybe there's some chemistry there. But, and he's a different size category than she is, so I don't imagine the sex would be that amazing, so much as painful. Anyway, they find the two wanted posters. They find out Taurus and Lilia were partners. Lilia doesn't remember him because that's part of her punishment, and it's Taurus's punishment to remember, as we said. They also found the missing journal page, and on it were the arcane like mathematics and plans to create the tidy monster. And who should serve as the base ingredient for the tidy monster but Heidi's brother, whom Soondead went to save at the very, very beginning against the stone golem, and then he disappeared with Heidi, and we found out Heidi wasn't real, well, he wasn't real either. He was just a representation. And the tidy monster is the only thing that's left of him. He is amorphous, you know, an amorphous moss and dead body eating entity that can go through walls and shit like that. So Taurus and Lilia probably like mortally wounded him, so Heidi sucked him into her work so that he could live as a monster. God, that's awful. Maybe Heidi wasn't so innocent in all this. But let's see. I'm sorry, I'm checking my notes because there's so much crap that happened in this campaign, like all at once. Yeah, they find the missing page with plans to create the tidy monster. Heidi's brother served as the base ingredient. And then they move on. They find a coffer room, sort of like a bank vault. It's just got like a bunch of drawers and a bunch of cabinets in it that need to be like pried open with crowbars because all of it is locked. And just about every single one that they opened either has treasure inside or snakes, which would just like spring load out into your face and bite your face, and your face would swell up like a beach ball. One of my favorite things to do to dungeon crawlers is to give them a room full of containers or a room full of like things to open. So they try to open every single one, and then they get pissed off when half of them have horrible things inside. But you have to open every one, because what if there's something great in one of them? It's like the empty hallway. There's nothing in it, but they're scared of it because it's an empty hallway. It's another great DM trick, is the room with 1,000 drawers in it. Anyway, so Taurus got the brunt of most of that while they were pulling all the drawers and cabinets open, and just started like stamping on snakes, because he has hooves and not feet, so it's safer for him to do that. And while they're getting ready to move on, they run into a specter, a ghost of Heidi herself. It was not the mummy. It was not the Labyrinth's weird, twisted interpretation of the damsel in distress that Taurus rapes and Soon Dead took advantage of, but the true Heidi, whose spirit tells them that there is a guardian in the final area of this dungeon called the Oroborus. And they go, the Oroborus, like the god Oroborus? And he goes, no, it is a creature that is just nicknamed the Oroborus. And like, oh, it's the snake that eats its own tail. It's a symbol of cycles, a symbol of infinity, stuff like that. Oh, I see the symbolism, haha, for the labyrinth that never ends. And that it will probably kill them if it finds them, because it's just too large. It is beyond their power to slay. And Zalus once is like, is it one of the cornerstones of the labyrinth? And the ghost of Heidi disappears after a very short time. They don't get much information out of her. Probably with good reason, because they're running with Taurus and Lilia, who killed her. But they go through Heidi's journal in greater detail, and Zalus is using knowledge arcana and a whole bunch of other knowledges that he's gathered from the Necromancer's book, from another book he got from a different wizard that they killed, and he's got like a semicircle of books around him, trying to translate this arcane genius's formulas to see if he can figure out how this is put together. And he finds that there are two kinds of handwriting in this journal, most of which is Heidi's. The other is someone else's, a spidery kind of like red handwriting that does not belong to Heidi. And he goes, wait, Heidi designed the labyrinth, but Bela Lugosi built it. I bet he took her journal after she had died and tried to use her work to make the labyrinth. So these are his notes. So they start reading Bela Lugosi's notes that are in Heidi's journal, and they find out that he basically like perverted her works and mutilated it into something that it wasn't supposed to be. Thusly, the 1 year time cycle where it expands and then collapses. And they find out that the four cornerstones of the labyrinth, the things that are holding it together, are Heidi, who is dead, the Tidy Monster, who is not, the Oroborus, which is apparently much stronger than them, and then the last thing is scratched out. And they look at each other and they go, okay, what are our options? Well, Taurus, because he can remember everything. It could be Bela Lugosi himself, because he runs the labyrinth. It could be the Pale Man, who doesn't seem to follow any kind of rule set whatsoever, other than being summoned by the puzzle boxes. So they've got several candidates, but they can't kill everybody, because most of them are way too strong or members of their own party. So Heidi's already dead. They don't really know how to track the Tidy Monster. Oroborus is apparently right in front of them, and they don't know who the fourth candidate is. So they continue to struggle to remove the 4 cornerstones of the Labyrinth. And I think that is where we will stop for today. That's as far as my notes go for now. I know this story's kind of complicated and I'm probably repeating myself quite a bit, but again, this was like 8 years ago, so I'm sorry if I remember things wrong or remember things out of order. I hope you're enjoying the story, so I will see you guys on the next D&D stories. Keep gaming. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I really love telling D&D stories, and I also really love eating food. So if you'd like to toss a couple of gold pieces into this humble bard's hat, be sure to check out my Patreon. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit the like button as well. And if you'd like access to maps, character art, and channel updates too, check out the D&D Stories Facebook. Keep gaming!